Hi, I'm Steve Hassan. I'm delighted to have on with me Mark Laxer. Hey, Mark.
Steve?
Mark and I go way back. I think, Mark, this was 1993 that you wrote Take Me for a Ride?
That's when it was published. I
Yep,
actually wrote it for 7 years before then. And
right.
as you know, as an author, it's the writing and it's in the rewriting that the real book comes out.
Totally. But the title is Coming of Age in a Destructive Cult. And Mark, I just want to set the table for our listeners. You are a successful tech entrepreneur. You're can I say that you have a tech company that was helping to find money launderers internationally for governments? Like,
Yeah.
the real deal. And you love the planet, you love conservation, you're a hiker, you're a musician, you're just a great guy. But you reached out to me and said, Steve, I have this project about what's going on with Trump, and I want to connect the dots with my experience, my meaning your experience with Zen Master Rama or Frederick Lenz, and what we're seeing in the country with Donald Trump. Is that?
Yeah, thank you so much, Steve. And back to what you said originally. So I co-run a software corporation that helps primarily the United States, but other partner governments track, target, and catch trade-based money laundering and trade fraud. And I used to have on my desk a little piece of paper. Some people have like a picture of a Porsche or a Lamborghini. I had a little piece of paper that said, every $1 billion helps. And we made good on that. And we worked with helping recover a lot of money, huge amounts of money recovered for governments, and also environmental criminals and things like that were caught, and we still do that. And in terms of other projects, I've written several books, not just the one that you held up. The second book is an attempt to bridge science and religion in terms of the theory of evolution through natural selection. And one of the side projects of that, I actually invented a technology while writing the novel. It's called virtual ecotourism. It's an immersive storytelling platform, a new form of media that corresponds with what is now, I guess the buzzword is VR, virtual reality. So I'm working on that project with wildlife conservationist Ian Redmond and a number of other
Very,
people.
very cool. You're a cool guy. And the last time we saw each other actually was a couple of years ago at the New England Complex Systems Institute International Congress on complex systems theory. And there you were. And you're like,
I was like, wait a minute, is that Steve Hassan? Yeah, no, I mean, the thing is, I have come across your work many times. It's always been extremely helpful to me personally, and I recommend it to my friends. As you know, Steve, there are many ways to join cults, or when I say cults, I mean destructive cults. There are many cults in society that are probably fairly benign. It's the destructive ones that we sort of want to
exactly.
make people aware. And just as there's so many ways to join a cult, there are also many ways to leave a cult. And the way I left a cult was I bicycled across the United States with a Siberian Husky puppy, and I did some reflecting and then came up with this book. But part of my healing, quite frankly, was to read your books and read other people's books and reflect in my own way how I could regain my own confidence. I think a lot of what defines for me what a destructive cult is one's self-confidence, one's belief in oneself kind of gets a big hit. And my first book, Taking Me for a Ride, the one that you held up, is about how I kind of came into being a 17-year-old with enormous amount of self-confidence. And I met a very charismatic professor at SUNY Stony Brook, State University of New York at Stony Brook. And over the years, I watched his very kind of creative and interesting and fun, with a lot of beautiful women, group transform into something that I thought was really cool and interesting. And what did my parents know? What did the rabbi know? I knew better. It transformed into a very destructive, abusive group. And so it was I feel very blessed to have faced the darkness, again, with the help of people like yourself and others, but sort of made my own way with it. And now I sort of came out and it's like, here's my book. I got sued $30 million, Steve. I don't know if you remember back in the day.
This one?
Yeah, they're trying to quiet me. They're trying to silence me and scare me. It turns out I'm kind of a tough guy to scare. I learned that about myself. It's like, don't try to scare me because you'll just piss me off. So instead of being scared with the $30 million lawsuit, which was chasing me for about a year and a half, it was a real lawsuit. It sort of made me feel bold. And I decided to put the whole book on the internet for free. It was one of the original Project Gutenberg texts that are out there, not just the first chapter, Steve, but the whole freaking book.
Yep.
And so I put it out there for free and feel very good. But anyway, I guess the point is that after I did all that, I moved on with my life and I have children and I have projects and I try to help wildlife and I'm trying to understand where humans are. I continued my spiritual search, except without a destructive cult leader. I'm like, where do humans fit in the natural world and so forth? And that's my second book, The Monkey Bible, and The Line. It has a companion rock opera. But then I look around and I say, wait a minute. Look at who's the president of the United States. And people, it's the weirdest thing. When people find out, oh, you were in a cult, ooh, that's taboo. Yeah. That's weird. Get away from me. And I'm thinking, people don't understand. I know you understand, but people generally, even super duper smart people, see, they don't get that cults are all around us. And people are in cults, they don't even know they're in a cult. And I'm looking at the president of the United States, and this to me is not Democrat versus Republican. It's not left versus right.
Right.
This is cult leader versus not
rest of us.
The rest of us. Thank you for that. So I decided that's tying the piece of the thread together, connecting the dots, as you pointed out earlier. Like, how do you connect the dots? Well, I came out of this cult, tried to face my past through the writing of this book and reading your books and other people's books and talking to a zillion people, and came to the realization that America is being run by a destructive cult leader, not per se in the exact same model as Jim Jones or something like that, but there's an awful lot of similarities, which I try to point out in this new graphic novel, Rama Trauma Trump. I left the cult, and now look what happened.
Right. Yeah, so question, did you think of doing this book before you heard about the Cult of Trump book that I wrote, or after I wrote the Cult of Trump? Just curious.
No, it's a good question. And by the way, I absolutely adore that book. I mean,
Can I hold it up?
Please do. I absolutely adore that book. That is a really seriously important book.
Thank you.
And I really wish that more people would read it. I think it's a book of our times. I really feel that. I started writing my book, my third book, Rama Trauma Trump. I left the cult, and now look what happened. about a year before I ever heard of your book, The Cult of Trump. I started writing it, and I guess the thing is, having gone through what I went through, I feel that bad things happen when good people do nothing.
Yes.
And I'm sort of this little guy in Vermont. I don't have big political connections. The media completely ignores me. I'm kind of, yes, I'm successful. I have a wonderful family. I go on adventures all around the planet. I run a travel storytelling group. I feel very happy in who I am, but I'm not, I don't go to dinner with the Obamas. I would love to, but they don't call me. Here I am.
On speed dial, Mark? Come on.
Here I am, Barack. Hey, dude. But I guess my point is that, I came up with this book because I feel that even though I'm not this plugged-in guy, everyone should do something. I think about Germany in the 1940s. I'm reading this very powerful book right now, Steve. It's called I Will Bear Witness by Victor Klemperer. It's his professor in Dresden, Germany. He's a Jew. And it's about his observations as World War II progressed all around him, and all his community were sent off to camps, concentration camps. And I have a very strong feeling that our country, the United States, this wonderful, powerful country with all these built-in checks and balances. I'm listening also now to Alexander Hamilton, book on tape by Ron Chernow. Wonderful, wonderful founding fathers about checks and balances and the Constitution, a system of laws. I feel that as a nation, we're so on the edge right now of losing.
I agree.
All that. And so I felt, I agree. So before I was so excited to find your book because I was about a year into writing mine and working with this amazing artist, Marcie Vallette, here in Vermont, to create my third book, Rama Trauma Trump. But I was so thrilled to come across your book, Steve. Do you know why?
Because we want to help save people from destructive mind control cults.
Correct, and so that I didn't have to write it. And I couldn't write as well as you did. So I am so glad that you wrote that book, because I wrote a comic book. I'm the comic book version of what you wrote for maybe a different crowd. You have all the... No,
this is a political science book meant to be taught in schools, high school and up, and college and graduate school.
Yeah, yours is an erudite, brilliant. I think your book is brilliant. It's a brilliant analysis that goes into great detail. My book is a very different market, has a different feel. It's more informal, and that's, look at me. Here I am. I'm this informal guy living in Vermont, and I'm reaching out to 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, like, dude, whoa, man. And
especially 18 and up, because they vote, right?
Well, I agree with that, but if you don't mind, let me just add, the 16-year-olds will be voting soon. So
True.
It's important to reach the 16-year-olds as well. But definitely, I hear what you're saying, and I do agree with that. So I was working on Rama Trauma Trump, trying to conceptualize how to. I don't want to just provide bullet points. I wanted to provide a story, something heartfelt, something emotional. I feel Rama Trauma Trump is an emotional story. It's a story more than, this is for me now, Steve, more than the dynamics of destructive cults. I think that's in there, but it's a story of loyalty and friendship, which is really the sort of the pushing back of that narcissistic, unempathetic, power-crazed, destructive world that we now find we find in our top leadership.
Right. So I want to just put a little more information in at this moment about Frederick Lenz.
Sure.
Because I heard about him. Obviously, I was doing cult exit counseling and stuff, and I started hearing from people who had been victimized in this cult, or people who were trying to rescue loved ones who had been taken into this meditation cult. And
Right.
and Frederick Lenz, who, as you correctly said, had a PhD and was a professor, morphed. He had been in a cult, an Indian guru cult of Sri Chinmoy.
Right.
And like many people who are in a cult who never get counseling and learn about cult mind control,
Right.
do a little bit of acid, whatever, and start having revelations that he's an enlightened being from the continent of Atlantis, and he called himself Atmananda, then Rama, then Zen Master Rama.
Right.
He was very hypnotic, and he was a womanizer, narcissist, so a lot of the stereotypical cult profile characteristics in him. I should say Dateline did a whole hour devoted on this cult, and so you have a website that you're going to have the book up, and we'll have links to these different TV shows and exposés and interviews with him, because he really conned a lot of people, and he too wrote a novel, if I'm remembering correctly, and manipulated the buying of it. But I really want to come back to what you said. Nobody joins a cult, or nobody knows that if they're in a cult, what a cult is. They think they're smart, they're in control, and they're right now with the pandemic and the economic problems, people are so vulnerable to all kinds of influential voices.
Oh my gosh, I totally agree with that. Yes. I think that Rama Frederick Lenz, it was really sad. A lot of these stories, I guess it's very important to me to get out the story of cult dynamics, because I think it's like the cult leaders, including Mr. Trump, it's almost like they read a document on how to manipulate people and how to control the flow of information. To me, a destructive cult very often is like a closed disinformation bubble. That's one of the main characteristics of it. But deception plays into it, and lying and gaslighting. Like, I'll say something and you say, "Why did you say that?" I say, "I never said that." It's just outright lying, and it messes with people's sense of reality. It's very difficult. But I think that there's a flip side to it, and it's a sad thing, and that is, like with Rama Trauma Trump, Steve, I think Trump is hurting, actually, like, through his inactivity and his bizarre behavior. He's actually hurting, if not killing, a lot of people. So I'm not really endeared to him and his politics, especially the white supremacy stuff. That really irks me. But there's something, I guess what I'm trying to say is there's something sad about Rama. There's something sad. Just I'm talking with you, this is coming up for me. Yeah?
Yeah.
I don't do interviews often, so I'm just sharing with you what I'm feeling right now. And I think it's important to educate people, and so that they're protected from people like this. But there's something sad and vulnerable and lonely about someone like Donald Trump, who was abused as a child. It's not like
I was listening to Trump talk about life in his family. I wrote a whole chapter on Trump and how he became, how he was groomed to become a cult leader by his father.
Sure.
I totally agree. And Frederick Lenz was a smart guy who got into a mind control cult.
Yeah.
Got his brain messed around with, got away, but never got therapy. And
it
then
was
he went on to victimize other people as a clone of the cult leader that
he hurt a lot of people. I experienced something that no one else really saw, and that was Fred Lenz Rama started using LSD in his groups. He had these group acid trips, and one thing about these cult leaders, they don't like to make themselves vulnerable. Like in a real relationship, like I might say, hey, you really hurt me. Let's talk about it. Let's work it through, or vice versa.
Right.
It's not like this crazy steep hierarchy. A cult leader won't do that. But I do remember, it's this one thing, and this is in my Rama Trauma Trump book, the new one. And it was telling. And I wish that's partly why I write these books, is because as someone who's in the inner circle, other people in the audience never experienced this with the powerful, great leader. And yes, there you go.
People are over here.
Yeah.
But you are over here. You were at the very beginning of the cult evolution.
Yeah, no, thank you for that.
People think they know what this is about, and they have no clue.
So your models are extremely helpful. They really, really are. So where I was Fred Lenz. This was out in 1984 in the desert east of LA, Anza Borrego Desert. He dropped acid, and I used to be friends with him, quote unquote, before he rose to power. So then he rose to power. He had thousands of whatever people and millions of dollars, and was
lots of beautiful women wanting him, right?
And a lot of abuse was happening.
Right.
He was really hurting a lot of people. And he took some drugs, some acid, and acid can kind of, I don't recommend the stuff. I really don't. But it can open someone up psychologically and make them very vulnerable. And he was vulnerable, and I helped him through a bad trip. And he turned to me, Steve. This was like a really emotional thing. And he said, Mark, we used to be friends. What happened? And I was crying. It's like, how do I tell him that, he was taken over by, some kind of narcissistic monster? But he was like, we're both crying. It's like, we used to be friends. What happened? Do you want to be friends with me? He said. And I said, yeah, I'd like to be friends because, I really cared about the guy. And then as he came down, this is the telling part. This is the key. And I know you study psychology. I study psychology, but not formally, right? Just by living. You actually took the courses, right? As he was coming off the acid trip, coming down, back down to earth, all the layers of his narcissistic, controlling personality came forth, and that vulnerable side disappeared. And he started, you're trying to take my power. And he's like talking about these negative forces and spirits, and his paranoid side came out. So all I'm trying to say, Steve, is people who are cult leaders like Trump and stuff like that, deep, deep down, and I'm not a psychiatrist, but I'm just saying from my gut feeling, from my heart, deep, deep down, there's someone in there who's good and kind, and is so freaking buried.
Yep.
And
very young child, I would predict.
As a very young child, exactly. And what's left is a shell of a person. It's so sad. It's a sad story.
Yep. And
we, in the public, have to protect ourselves, A, from political cults, B, from quote unquote spiritual cults, and 3, if you don't mind me saying, on a personal level, sometimes there's this very abusive thing going on between individuals where someone has cult-like behaviors and is putting someone else down and gaslighting them and so on.
Yep.
And I'm interested in all 3 levels.
So I want to connect the dots, if I may, Mark. I'm looking at the time, so we have a few more minutes. But this I'm going to call it a scam, but I'm sure he got it somewhere. But he was having his members pay him a monthly fee, and he was going to teach them how to be enlightened. And I know he said to you, you were like the closest thing to becoming enlightened of all of his students, or he said something like that. But anyway, his thing was that there are all these evil entities everywhere, and through his spiritual power, he will protect his students from these evil entities. And in the Cult of Trump, I write about these cult groups that are part of the New Apostolic Reformation, where the leader says, I'm a prophet or an apostle, and I speak directly to God, and Satan is everywhere, and I have the power to protect you from demons and satanic spirits, and I have the power to exorcise these spirits. And there are millions of people who are in Trump's base who have been told by their apostles and their prophets that God wants Trump to be president. And that there are all these demonic forces in the left and the media and everything else. So they have this whole spiritualized, cultish mindset that mirrors what you experienced.
Yeah, I would agree with what you said and add to it, if I may.
Please.
And I guess my reaction to that is I see a parallel with, it reminds me of the book 1984 by George Orwell, where there's the other, you need a scapegoat, and to frighten people. And if you frighten people, you kind of take them off balance, and you can control and manipulate them so much easier. Rama Frederick Lenz, or Fred, did that with us with these negative energy, negative forces things, and scared, seriously, I mean.
Phobia indoctrination is what I call it.
I remember really being insanely scared of these things. I became sort of almost afraid of myself. It really does a mind trip on you, and feel but the thing is, with what Trump is doing, he's doing that in a spiritual sense. And as you point out, I don't know if it's these conspiracy groups or whatever. I agree with what you said, and the thing I would add is he's, in a parallel way, he's also doing that with the other, meaning the Mexicans or the Hispanics or the Jews or the Muslims. There's always some other boogeyman, and he's playing on white supremacist themes. It's usually not spoken, but it's insinuated in his speech. And he's scaring not just the people who, I don't know, some people might consider them to be more maybe fringe in terms of their beliefs in God has sanctioned Donald to be, okay, some people do believe that, and I have friends who do actually believe that. But I would think that may not be mainstream America. But what is more mainstream, and it hurts me to say this, what is more mainstream is him doing that and saying, the brown people are coming to get you. Mm-hmm. The black people, mm-hmm. They're coming to get you. The Jews, they're going to get you jobs. They're going to get your daughter. The Asian people.
Yeah, I haven't heard him say the thing about the Jews because his daughter Ivanka converted, presumably.
Well, I think, I don't know. I know that I think what he does, I think he's actually a very smart, sick man. And I think indirectly he's doing things by who he associates with and the organization.
He's being influenced by people who have a lot, authoritarians who have agendas, and they know how to manipulate them, like Putin, like Opus Dei, like NAR, and,
Yeah.
and Koch brothers and others. But I want to come back to this effort to and your book is what, 40 pages, graphically, beautifully, illustrated.
32
pages. So it's a quick read, but it's profound, and it comes from a real life experience with a really educated, intelligent person, yourself, who had this firsthand experience, survived, went on, thrived. You're thriving because you're still happening, but you want to educate people. Wake up! This is real. Like, this is happening. And like, learn about what is a cult, what is mind control, learn about hypnosis, learn about phobias and how to cure them. Like, protect your life, and let's think about how to build a more healthy future, and not just like, we're helpless, the corruption is too much and there's nothing we can do. We can do a lot if we are smart and if we work together collaboratively, right?
Absolutely. I feel that there's such opportunity now. So I have a very close friend who voted for Trump, and I found that interesting in terms of how we communicate. And this guy's really, really super duper smart.
I have a friend like that too, by the way.
And we've had these discussions. We've traveled, his kids and my kids, we all hang out. He's incredibly talented, real deep thinker. And I'm like, I don't quite get it. And his point was that, and I don't agree with it, by the way, but I'm just sharing his point of view. He feels that by setting society right on the edge where it's about to blow up, I'm paraphrasing, I don't know if he'd say exactly that, it's going to cause people who are generally lazy to stand up and, for instance, write a book. And not that I'm lazy, but to write a book and take up a sign and say Black Lives Matter, or become activists and stand up and fight for our democracy, because it is degrading before our eyes. And now the same person who voted for Trump, he called me up the other day. I was almost in tears. He said, listen, I saw the PDF because, I'm sharing the book for free. It's a PDF. Just, I hope it goes viral. I don't just let it go. Let it reach a few million people in swing states or whatever. He read it and he said, it's not like I have Dumbledore's army or anything, because I'm not Dumbledore. I have no army. But he said, I want to help you reach people with this book.
Wow.
And so he's the first person who called. And of course, you're helping and stuff like that. But to reach the media, to reach CNN or Stephen Colbert or anybody, it's very hard if you're not connected and, your uncle is a senator or whatever, to reach any kind of population.
Right.
Other than
hoping a PR company is going to hear about your book and say, we're donating all of our connections and all of our time, because
or Steve, a partner organization, the DNC or the Project Lincoln, the Republicans for the U.S. Constitution. What a great idea! So they could use this PDF and frame it. They could put it on their own cover. They could brand it. They could send it out for fundraising for their project. I don't want any money from this.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just have to say, Steve, that I was, of course, honored that you would interview me and that you like my project. It means so much to me. And not or. And for my dear friend who voted for Trump to say, I want to help you make this project happen. So it's not just reaching, my family and friends. It means a lot to me. But the other thing is, getting back to what I was saying earlier, about the personal, the sad part of this story, not just, oh, he is this, he's this, and he's abusing people and he's doing this. That's all true. But the sad part of the story is still there, the personal side. And I don't want to be mean to Trump. I don't want to. I feel sad. I feel sorry for him, and I don't want to have a mean book.
So we're going to need to wrap up in the next few minutes, but yeah. I want to flip the attention off of the cult leader for a minute and talk about the believers who got lied to and taken into the delusion, because I was in the Moonies and I thought, Armageddon was going to happen in 1977, and I fasted for Richard Nixon on the Capitol stairs because Moon said God wanted Nixon to be president, even though he was in the Watergate problem.
Yeah.
What I want to add is it's fine to exit. It's fine to say, you know what? I did vote for him. I did believe in him. I was watching Fox News or whatever. But I was doing the best I could with the information that I had. But now I have new information. And I don't like what I see. And now I have a bigger frame to understand what is a cult and what is mind control. And I don't want to be any part of it, so I'm exiting. And you don't need to be ashamed. You don't, if families members have cut off from you because you were a Trump follower, you can say, hey, I've missed you. By the way, I don't like Trump anymore. I've changed my mind. It's okay. People are going to embrace you. They're not going to say, you should have listened to me. I told you he was a bad news. You don't say that to people.
None of that.
You're like, well, come on, buddy.
Yeah, it's. I agree with all that, Steve. I think a lot of this doesn't have to be so with such walls between us. I think it's all about personal relationship and love, actually, and empathy. And there are reasons why people vote this way. There are reasons why people vote that way. There's something I was reading about. There's a genetic basis for some people have a real need for certainty, and change is not so easy for them, so they vote a certain way. There's all kinds of reasons why people vote a certain way.
I'll tell you one big factor, to interrupt you for just 1 second, is corporal punishment. Corporal punishment definitely changes children's brains in not a good way for encouraging them to think for thumselves.
There's all sorts of things in it, and what I want to do is I don't want to thumb my nose at anybody,
right?
Including Trump and his family and his inner circle and people like that. Because I know what it's like to be in an inner circle, and I know I'm trying to imagine what it's like to be Kellyanne Conway at this time. I'm guessing that there's a lot of
husband who knows that Trump's a narcissist and does the Lincoln Project.
Well, George is actually quite articulate, and is actually, he should run for president himself. Now that I think about it, but just looking at Kellyanne, my heart goes out to her on a personal level. I'm not friends with them. They don't invite me to go to the Kennedy Square and things like that. Here I am, Kellyanne in Vermont. Here I am in Montpelier, but it's very difficult to hold these things. And I think we both know that power can be very seductive. I'm trying to visualize what it's like to be somebody who has access to, walks into the White House, and there they are in the West Wing.
Absolutely.
Or Stephen Miller, and people I don't really agree with at all, but they have real power. And some of these people maybe have a very nice or different type of side, but they're seduced by a power. And once you get in, I'm not lecturing you. I know you know this stuff, but once you get in, it's really hard to backstep. And I guess your point is to embrace, not to judge. And I totally agree.
I'm going to interrupt you. Forgive me, because we're running out of time. But I really think people need to step back in time before they ever heard of Trump, and do a slow remembrance of how did they come to be associated with Trump or vote for Trump. Like, to really track the influences in a person's life to where they are now. And here's the therapeutic question. If I knew then what I know now, would I have gotten involved? Because that shows you're thinking for yourself. Because if the answer is no, to a relationship, to a job, to a movement, whatever, if the answer is no, get out. Don't stay in what you don't want to be in, right? You have free will. You can make choices.
Yeah, you have choices. You have free will, and I would submit that in our culture, that the concept of checks and balances is central. Whether you are a Republican or a Democrat, or somewhere else on that spectrum, I can respect all these folks. I side with the United States Constitution, and I would like for all us, everybody, to meet on the ledge, to come out on the other side of this, and all stand together.
Yeah.
And it sounds maybe a little too much like the '60s, and we listen to Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. But I mean that.
I love them.
Well, I love them too. But I mean that in a bigger, a welcoming to everybody way.
So this is the influence continuum we were just talking about. Ethical influence, checks and balances are down here. This is on my Freedom of Mind website. And all the unethical influences, fear, guilt, the dependency, obedience. This is all on my website, by the way, freedomofmind.com. But once you understand, this is ethical practice and behavior, this is unethical, it gives you a frame to navigate this complex world, because there's so much confusion. And people need to start thinking again to navigate healthy choices.
Healthy choices. And for me, that all starts with hearing a story, a narrative, because that's easy or interesting or compelling for somebody to follow. And as they open up, then they can see your bite model or the continuum model and start reading more and more. But I think to have, that's one thing I like about our society, an open society, not a closed, dictatorial sort of thing. And that is, there are many threads, and you get to shop and choose. And the scientific method is, let's see which one works and
right.
Eat it.
Test.
Test. In the great state of Missouri, show me.
Too bad they're not all wearing masks from the governors, but
we will see. We're in a very difficult time right now, and I'm thrilled that you're out there with your books. I'm trying to get my little PDF sort of.
We're doing a blog, and we're going to share it, and I hope people, will read it. And like your friend, that blew me away, that someone so close to you goes, I want to help. spread the word. And honestly, if people have funds and they can hire a PR company, I mean, it's great to partner with organizations, but hire a PR company to get it out to bigger audiences. That would help a lot of young people and everyone else who's young at heart.
Michael Bloomberg, are you listening? We need help.
You never know. I have some very interesting people following me these days on Twitter. So
very good.
No, Mark. Hey, listen, thank you so much, and thank you for asking me to give a little plug for your book, and thank you for mentioning Cult of Trump and Combating in the back page. So
well, that's where I want to direct people to. I just want to tell a story and then say, go read Steve's book. So thank you for all you do, and we have some work to do ahead of us.
Absolutely. Thank you again, my friend. Take care.
Okay, thanks. Bye.